Hello, everybody. In the previous session, we have seen one kind of an oscillator, that is RC phase shift oscillator, wherein we have seen the oscillator, the amplifier is an inverting type, and the feedback, it provides a 180-degree phase shift. So altogether, the phase shift is 0 degrees or 360 degrees, which satisfies the Barkhausen's criteria. The next kind of a popular oscillator is a Wien bridge oscillator. The circuit diagram of a Wien bridge oscillator is shown in this figure. You can see there is an amplifier here, and this amplifier is a non-inverting amplifier. Unlike what you have used in RC phase shift oscillator, where the amplifier was an inverting type, here this amplifier is a non-inverting amplifier. The input is provided at the non-inverting terminal, and the feedback is provided at the inverting input terminal. Okay, so this feedback uh, is provided through a bridge kind of structure. So this bridge is called the Wien bridge. It has got 4 arms. So R1 and R2, they are the resistances used along with C1 and C2. In one of the arms, R1 is in series with the C1. In the other arm, R2 and C2 are in parallel. Okay, this actually forms the feedback. Uh, I mean, the feedback path. And this, you can see there is a resistance R3 and R4. If you compare this with the circuit of a non-inverting amplifier, this R3 is actually the feedback resistance where you use that RF, and this R4 is in place of that R1 in your non-inverting amplifier circuit. R3 and R4, and R1 and R2. R1 and C1 are in series, R2 and C2 are in parallel. So you can consider this as impedance Z1, where R1 and C1 are in series, and R2 and C2 are in parallel. That impedance can be considered as impedance Z2. Okay, rest of the things are same, the inverting and non-inverting input terminals. This is VCC, VE. Frequency of oscillation, we will come to that later. Okay. So this feedback network, it comprises of a Wien bridge circuit. You can see a Wien bridge circuit. The op-amp used here is non-inverting amplifier. Op-amp is operated in non-inverting mode. That means we have seen that if the amplifier is in inverting mode, the feedback should provide 180-degree phase shift. So thereby the total phase shift around the circuit will be 0 degrees or 360 degrees. If the amplifier is non-inverting amplifier, that means there is 0-degree phase shift. The feedback also should provide 0-degree or 360-degree phase shift. So this is one important thing you should remember in Wien bridge oscillator. Since the amplifier is a non-inverting amplifier, the feedback also should be 0-degree phase shift. So it should satisfy the Barkhausen's criterion in the sense the total phase shift should be 0 degrees or 360 degrees. So the oscillation occurs at the frequency for which the phase shift through the Wien bridge is 0 degrees, because the amplifier is in non-inverting mode. Okay, so there, in RC phase shift, the feedback path provided 180-degree phase shift. Here the feedback phase shift should be 0 degrees, because the non-inverting amplifier also provides 0-degree phase shift. So this Wien bridge oscillator, though this is the circuit diagram given in your textbook, there are actually different kinds of circuit diagrams for the same circuit. This is an alternate circuit for Wien bridge oscillator, wherein you can see this is a non-inverting amplifier. This is input given to your, the feedback is given as the input to the non-inverting terminal. This is the feedback thing. R1, it is in place of the RF, that is feedback path, and this you can consider as R1. This acts as a voltage divider, and this is a lead lag circuit that causes that 0-degree phase shift. And it can also be drawn like this, where this circuit and this part is combined to show. Anyway, the operation of all of these circuits will be the same. Here also there is R1 and R2, there's a voltage divider. R4 and C1 in series. Here R3 and C2 are in parallel. Just the notations are different. Okay, you can draw any of these circuits, whichever you are comfortable with. This is another kind of the same circuit. Here also R1 and C1 are in series, R2 and C2 are in parallel. This is given here. You should consider, or you should remember, here there is plus, here there is minus. Unlike these diagrams where here there is minus and here there is plus, in this circuit, everywhere where there is, to the inverting terminal there is the feedback thing, and to the non-inverting terminal you are giving the input. Okay, So this is also another kind. R and C, they're in series, here they're in parallel. Okay, so there are different ways of having the same circuit. Okay, this is yet another consideration where this is the non-inverting amplifier part and this is the feedback part. Should remember the feedback is given as the input voltage to the non-inverting input, and this is your normal non-inverting amplifier. Okay, so in everything you should remember that you are having the op amp in non-inverting amplifier mode. So whatever the feedback you are getting, it should be given to the non-inverting thing as the input. So just like we have seen the equations for RC phase shift oscillator, the considerations, you have to see it here. In for the Wayne bridge network, normally we will take R1 and R2 as equal, and they are equal to R. If you consider R1 and R2 are equal, they will be equal to R. Similarly, C1 and C2, if they are equal, you can consider them equal to R. Then, sorry, C1 and C2, they can be taken as C if they are equal. The feedback factor or beta, or that it's also called attenuation, that is given by the equation, VF by V naught. And that in this case, it should be 1 by 3. Like in case of RC phase shift oscillator, it was 1 by 29. Here it is 1 by 3. So you know the Barkhausen's criterion, that is magnitude of beta A should be greater than 1. So if the magnitude of beta A is greater than 1, beta if it is 1 by 3, so magnitude of A by 3 is greater than 1. In other words, A should be greater than 3. So what does this A stand for? A is the gain of the amplifier. That means in the case of a Wayne bridge oscillator, the amplifier gain should be greater than 3. Okay. Next, you have the frequency of oscillation. In this case, the frequency of oscillation is given by F naught, that is 1 by 2 pi square root of R1, R2, C1, C2. This is the equation for frequency of oscillation. There is actually derivation of this. Again, that derivation is out of the scope of your syllabus. So we will just consider this equation, and we're going to use them in solving our numerical examples. Again, if R1 and R2, we said if they are equal, R1 and R2, if they're equal to R, so it will be R square. C1 and C2, if it is equal to C, it will be C square. So under the square root, if you have R square and C square, if you find the square root, it will become R into C. That's why frequency of oscillation F naught will be equal to 1 by 2 pi RC. Okay. So next, this gain, what you have said here in particular, in this Wayne bridge oscillator, this is the gain of a non-inverting amplifier. This amplifier is a non-inverting amplifier. We know that the gain of a non-inverting amplifier is 1 plus RF by R1. We have studied this in op amps. The gain of a non-inverting amplifier is 1 plus RF by R1. So in this particular case, this is RF. In place of RF, we have R3, and in place of R1, we have R4. Okay, in place of R1 we have R4, in place of RF we have R3. So 1 plus RF by R1, it can be written as 1 plus R3 by R4. In place of RF we have R3, in place of R1 we have R4. That's why it is A, that is equal to 1 plus R3 by R4. So we know that to start the oscillations in an oscillator, the Barkhausen's criterion is magnitude of beta A should be greater than 1. Okay, so that is A should be greater than 3 because beta is equal to 1 by 3. So A should be greater than 3. Here A is 1 plus R3 by R4. If 1 plus R3 by R4 is greater than 3, R3 by R4 will be greater than 3 minus 1, that is 2, right? R3 by R4 will be greater than 2. In other words, R3 will be greater than 2R4. Okay, R3 will be greater than 2 times of R4. This is to start the oscillations. So once the oscillations are sustained, beta A should be equal to 1. That means R3 should be equal to 2 times of R4. Okay, so these are the considerations we have in Wayne bridge oscillator. This is a circuit, there is a bridge in the feedback network. That's why it's called a Wayne bridge. Wayne is actually the name of the person who constructed this circuit. There are alternate circuits for this. The same circuit drawn in a different form. If you connect them, it actually everything connects. All the connections, they mean the same thing. Then we have seen the considerations, some of the data considerations with respect to what the gain should be, what the frequency is, and how you can design this oscillator with different values for different resistances. Okay. Next important topic in this particular chapter you have is IC 555 timer. Okay, so now we have a might be having a question as to where we use these oscillators. So where do we use these oscillators? So they are used in most of the electronic circuits, wherein the oscillations or the frequencies are generated. Like in examples of radar, or maybe your TVs, okay, in radio systems, okay, and in most of the digital circuits. We have actually not seen the part of sequential circuits in digital circuits, so we are yet to go to that. They're actually in digital circuits, all the digital circuits, they are driven by a clock. Okay, so the clock, it's a constant, it's a signal of constant frequency at which all the events are triggered. So to generate that constant a signal of constant frequency, we need an oscillator. So that's why in every digital circuit we have an oscillator. Okay, so uh, in the computers we use these oscillators. In every computer or in every digital circuit we use these oscillators. So how are these? Normally, these oscillators, they are some available ICs are used as oscillators, or some timer circuits might be used in some applications. Like there is a thing called 555 timer. It's a popular and versatile analog digital integrated circuit. So it is used to generate precise time delays and timing pulses, whose duration and frequency are determined by the externally connected resistor and capacitor. You are going to connect and make a circuit. So these 555 timers, again, they are used in different circuits to obtain certain kinds of oscillations. Okay, this 555 timer, the name of the IC is 555 timer. So why the name is 555 is actually there are three resistances of 5 kilo ohms each, that is inbuilt in the IC. Okay, so it's an 8-pin package as shown in this figure. So the power supply is given at VCC, which can be in the range of +5 to +18 volts, depends on the kind of the IC. 5 volts, sometimes 12 volts, sometimes 18 volts or 15 volts or whatever. So there is a VCC where power supply is connected and a ground. Okay, then there are different pins: the trigger, the output pin at 3, reset pin at pin number 4, then there is a discharge pin at pin number 7, then there is a threshold at pin number 6, and control voltage at pin number 5. So we will see the internal functional diagram of the 555 timer. So this is the internal functional diagram of the 555 timer with respect to the different pins. Pin number 1 is ground, pin number 8 is VCC. From VCC to ground, there is 3 resistances, RA, RB, and RC. Each resistance is 5 kilohms. So that is the one of the reasons why this particular timer is called 555 timer. Then we have two comparators. Comparator circuit we have seen in op amps, right? Two comparators which are present in the 555 timer. See, all these things, they are inbuilt in the IC. We are not going to connect them externally. These are present. It's available in the form of a chip. If you use that chip, so inside that chip, all these things are present. They are present while manufacturing. So the comparator 1 actually compares the voltage with this particular level, that is 2/3 of VCC. So what happens is, from this end, from VCC to ground, the total voltage is VCC. From here till here, total voltage is VCC. So here the voltage gets divided into 3 equal parts. Okay, 3 equal parts, because there are 3 equal resistances, 5K, 5K, 5K. The voltage across RC will be VCC by 3, right? Voltage across RB will be VCC by 3, and voltage across RA will be VCC by 3. So VCC by 3 plus VCC by 3 plus VCC by 3, total voltage is VCC. That is the applied voltage or the supply voltage, right? So if you measure the voltage at this particular node to ground, this voltage is the voltage across RC, that is VCC by 3. If you measure the voltage from this particular node till ground, sorry, that is, if you measure the voltage from here to ground, it is VCC by 3 plus VCC by 3. That's why it is 2 VCC by 3, right? So this comparator, it will compare the voltage with 2 VCC by 3. This comparator, its input is, one of the input is VCC by 3, right? This comparator will compare the voltage with VCC by 3. Okay, so what we are doing is here, the 2 VCC by 3 is given to the inverting input terminal. Here VCC by 3 is given to the non-inverting input terminal. Okay, so that means the voltage, if it goes above 2 VCC by 3, the this will send an output. The output gets, this comparator gets triggered. If the voltage exceeds 2 VCC by 3, the comparator 1 gets triggered. Similarly, if the voltage goes lesser than VCC by 3, because here you have VCC by 3, if the voltage goes lesser than VCC by 3, this comparator or the comparator 2 gets triggered. Okay, comparator 1 gets triggered when the voltage will be more than 2 VCC by 3. Comparator 2 will be triggered when the voltage will be lesser than VCC by 3. Okay. The outputs of these two comparators, they are given to a flip-flop. So what is a flip-flop? Flip-flop actually, by the time I went to this topic, I would have completed the flip-flop normally. But in your case, that sequential circuits part of digital circuits is still pending. There we will see what is a flip-flop. Okay, for the time being, you remember, a flip-flop is a digital circuit which, it acts based on the inputs. Here it is a RS flip-flop. So based on the inputs R and S, and on the previous output, it will update the next state of the output. So here R and S are connected to this comparators. The R and S inputs of the flip-flop are connected to outputs of the comparators. R stands for reset, S stands for set. Okay, R is the reset and S is the set. What happens is, whenever R is 0 and S is 1, whenever R is 0 and S is 1, the output will be set. When R is 0 and S is 1, output will be set. Output will be set in the sense output will become 1. When R is 1 and S is 0, output will be reset. When R is 1 and S is 0, output will be reset. Reset means it will become 0. Okay, so here flip-flop will have two, there are two pins at the output of a flip-flop. One is the actual output Q. Q is the output, and its invert, that is called Q bar. In this case, what you are connecting at the output is actually the Q bar. Okay, so what you are connecting at the output is the Q bar. That means the invert of the input, the invert of the output. So this Q bar will be 0 if R is 0 and S is 1. And this Q bar will be 1 if R is 1 and S is 0. Okay, so that is connected to one of the terminals of this transistor. There are two transistors, Q1 and Q2. Okay, the Q bar is connected to the base of Q1, and it is connected to the collector of this Q2. So the transistor has three terminals: base, collector, and emitter. So this terminal is called the base. Wherever you find the arrow mark, that is called the emitter, and the other terminal is the collector. So Q1 is connected to the base of Q1 and to the collector of Q2. Okay, so based on that, so okay, we will see how it is connected. So this is the internal functional diagram of a 555 timer. To one of the functions of the 555 timer is to use it as an astable oscillator. So this is one of the important questions in this particular chapter. It can be asked for 8 marks in the exam. What is an astable oscillator? It is also called a astable multivibrator. Okay, so this is one of the common application of 555 timer. So this is a circuit which is used for 555 timer. You have used it as a block. Internally these things will be there. Internally these things will be there inside the 555 timer. So what happens is, pin number 1 is ground. Okay, it is connected to the ground as seen here. Pin number 8 is VCC. So you are connecting it to VCC. Then pin number 3 is output. You can see pin number 3 is the output pin. So this is the output. Okay. Next. Pin number 4 is your reset pin, and pin number 7 is your discharge pin. Okay, pin number 4 is reset and pin number 7 is the discharge pin. Okay, so they are connected like this. From VCC to pin number 7 there is one resistance R1. Okay, pin number 2 and 6 they are shorted and they are connected to a capacitance through and also a resistance here R2. Okay, pin number 2 is actually your trigger point and pin number 6 is threshold, so they are connected together. Pin number 2 and pin number 6 they are connected together and they are actually given to one of the inputs of your comparator. Pin number 2 is given to the inverting input of comparator 2. Pin number 6 is given to non-inverting input of comparator 1. Okay, so this is the discharge pin number 7. It is where the voltage or the current will discharge from this 555 timer. Then pin number 5 is connected to the ground via a capacitance. Pin number 6 or pin 2 they are also connected to the ground via a capacitance. So this is the circuit of an astable oscillator using your 555 timer. Okay. So when you're asked in the exam to explain this, you should draw this diagram as well as this diagram. This shows the internal details. So to draw it here, it will become difficult. So you draw it separately. Then you draw the circuit of a 555 timer as used in astable oscillator. So to understand this operation, so whenever the power supply VCC is turned on, the timing capacitor C it charges towards VCC through the resistances R1 and R2. So when the power supply is turned on, this is connected, this capacitor gets charged. This capacitor gets charged, the current is flowing through R1 and R2 and then C, right? It gets charged through R1 and R2 till VCC. Okay, it gets charged till VCC. So the timing constant, it is dependent on two resistances R1 and R2 which are in series. So that's why the time constant is R1 plus R2 into C. So the time constant, as I said in the previous class, time constant means product of R and C. Here R means there are two resistances in series. That's why we consider R1 and R2 in series. That is sum of R1 and R2 multiplied by the capacitance value, that is C. So whenever it is charged, whenever it is charging, okay, that means when the power supply is turned on, when it is charging, the output pin, that is pin number 3 is high. When it is charging, pin number 3 is high because R is 0 and S is 1, which makes the flip-flop output Q is 1 and Q bar is 0. So what we mean by this is R is 0 and S is 1. Yeah, that means Q is 0 and Q bar is, sorry, R is 0 and S is 1. So Q is 1 and S bar is 0. As I said, if R is 0 and S is 1, that means the output will be set. S is 1 in the sense output is set. So Q is equal to 1. Now, I have told you this is the Q bar, not the Q output. It is the Q bar, the invert of Q. If Q is 1, Q bar will be 0, right? If Q bar is 0, here you have a NOT gate, right? The output stage is an inverter. If the input to this inverter is 0, you know what happens? If you connect 0 to the input of a NOT gate, it will become 1, right? When Q bar is 0, the output will be 1 because there is an inverter. That's why we say the output is high. Okay, the output is high. Okay, the output is high. So when the capacitor VC tends to increase beyond 2/3 of VCC, now your capacitor is charging, right? That capacitor voltage will get charged up to VCC. The capacitor voltage gets charged up to VCC. Before reaching VCC, it will traverse through different stages. Like when it crosses 2/3 of the value of VCC, the comparator 1 saturates and its output becomes high. So because here to one end, you have connected 2/3 of VCC, this threshold value, it checks with this value. If that value is becomes greater than 2/3 of VCC, comparator 1 becomes saturated and its output becomes high. When its output becomes high, the flip that output of comparator 1 is connected to R, right? If this becomes 1, then what happens? That Q becomes 0. If Q becomes 0, Q bar will become 1. If Q bar becomes 1, output will become 0, right? If Q bar will become 1, here it will get inverted, so output will become 0. So this makes the output low. This in turn makes the transistor Q1 on. Okay, the transistor Q1 will become on, because if this becomes 1, this is, if the base is connected to 1, this transistor turns on, and capacitor C starts discharging towards ground through R2 with the timing constant T2, that is equal to R2 into RC. So if this, sorry, transistor becomes on, that starts discharging, the capacitor starts discharging. So the discharge pin is at pin number 7. So here pin number, here R1 doesn't come into consideration. So while discharging, the capacitor will discharge through R2 only. That's why the discharge time constant is R2 into C. Instead of R1 plus R2, here we have only one resistance, R2. So it is R2 into C. Okay, that's why the discharging time constant is R2 into C. Now when it is discharging, the voltage starts falling, right? Voltage starts falling. So once it falls, once it falls below 1/3 of VCC, the comparator 2 will saturate. So here there is another comparator which will compare the value of the voltage with VCC by 3, that is 1/3 of VCC. If it falls below 1/3 of VCC, the comparator 2 will saturate. When it saturates, it becomes 1. If this becomes 1, then pin number S becomes 1. If S is 1, again Q will become 1. If Q is 1, Q bar is 0. That means again output will become 1, right? So that is the thing. This again output will become high, causing flip-flops S is equal to 1, and Q is 1, Q bar is 0. If Q bar is 0, output will become high. This in turn makes the transistor Q1 off. Okay, if Q bar is 0, that is connected to base of Q1, transistor Q1 is off, and again capacitor C starts charging. So what we observe is the capacitor starts charging at 1/3 of VCC, and it starts discharging at 2/3 of VCC, right? So it's periodically charged and discharged between 2/3 of VCC and 1/3 of VCC respectively. So what we observe, if you plot the graph of voltage across VCC, at VCC, 1/3 of VCC, capacitor gets charged, starts charging, and at 2/3 of VCC, capacitor starts discharging. So this will continue. Okay, so this is the voltage across the capacitance. And if you draw the output voltage, whenever the capacitor is charging, the output is VCC. Once the capacitor starts discharging, the output is 0. So this, you are getting oscillations like this square wave signal with certain time interval t high and t low. This is called the output of an astable oscillator. Okay, so you are getting some pulses. So this is the output of an astable oscillator. So there is no stable state here. That's why it's called an astable oscillator. There is no stable state. It keeps oscillating between VCC and 0, right? So that's why it's called an astable oscillator. So this astable oscillator, what you see is it provides a periodic signal. It provides a periodic signal with a period T, where there is a high time and a low time. You can adjust this high time and low time by changing the values of resistances R1, R2, and also the capacitance value C. Okay, so what you observe is the time for which V0 is high is the time during which the capacitor charges. When it is high, the capacitor is actually charging. When it is charging, the time constant is R1 plus R2 into C, right? R1 plus R2 into C into 0.693. 0.693 is actually log 2 to the base 10, right? Sorry, log 2 to the base E. This 0.693 is log 2 to the base E, or you can call it ln 2. Ln 2 is 0.693. So that is the way you calculate the time from the timing constant. Okay, so R1 plus R2 into C multiplied by ln 2 will give you the time for which it is high. And when the output is low, it is actually the time during which the capacitor discharges. The capacitor discharges through R2 alone. That's why the timing constant is R2C multiplied by ln 2. Ln 2 is 0.693. So the time for which it is high is 0.693 into R1 plus R2 into C. Time duration for which it is low is 0.693 into R2 into C. The total time duration, that is the period, is sum of T high plus T low. If you find that it is 0.693 into R1 plus R2C plus 0.693 R2C, so 2 R2 into C. So twice R2 is added with R1. So 0.693 into R1 plus 2 R2 into C. You can find that. The frequency is actually the inverse of the period, right? Frequency is 1 upon T. If you find 1 upon T, it will be 1 by 0.693 R1 plus 2 R2 into C. So 1 by 0.693 will give you 1.44. If you calculate 1 by 0.693, it is 1.44 upon R1 plus 2 R2 into C. Then there is something called duty cycle. Duty cycle is the ratio of the high time divided by total time. The high time is this 0.693 divided by R1 plus R2C divided by the total time is this. Okay, so the 0.693 is common, C is common. So what you get is R1 plus R2 divided by R1 plus 2R2 into 100%. So this duty cycle determines for what duration of the total period the signal is high. If the high time and low time are equal, then the duty cycle will come to 50%. That means the signal is high for 50% of the total duration. If the high time is twice the low time, then it is 66%, right? That means for 2 times the low period, we have the signal as high. So depending on for what duration of the total time the T high is on, you get the duty cycle, right? So ratio of high time divided by the total time. Okay, so this is about an astable oscillator using 555 time. So we use this in circuits, to generate some periodic pulses. So in the next class, we will solve some numerical examples on RC phase shift oscillator, Wien bridge oscillator, and also on this astable oscillator using IC 555 time.